Opportunity is adversity.
Right center! He ties the game!
Refuse to lose.
20 strikeouts!
United we play. United we win.
And goodbye, home run!
All hits all the time.
We are family.
Max Scherzer, double-digit Ks.
We're busting ours to kick yours.
Fun to watch.
Minus 15.
Respect all, fear none.
Into the upper deck.
Intensity is not a perfume.
Oh, mercy!
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
From inside the warehouse at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, it is the MASN All Access Podcast. Paul Mancano and Bobby Blanco here with you as always. And of course, the MASN All Access Podcast is brought to you by Marymount University. Visit MarymountSaints.com to learn more about our student athletes and programs today. Bobby.
Yes.
We are in the midst of January.
Yes.
We are in a dead period in terms of baseball.
Yes.
We have had an exciting offseason, though, in terms of just the overall baseball stories. Stuff is happening, around the league, I would say.
Yeah. I would say, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially the past couple of weeks.
It has been an interesting past couple of weeks. But not a whole lot going on in terms of the Baltimore Orioles. But there are some little things that we're going to get to later on in the podcast. So let us know what you think. Comment along. Ask questions as we go. We are streaming live on the MASN Orioles Twitter page, on the MASN All Access and MASN Orioles Facebook page, MASN Orioles YouTube channel. And, of course, you might be listening along on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Wherever you can get podcasts, you can get the MASN All Access Podcast or tweet at Paul Mancano or at Bobby underscore Blanco as we go. So we are going to get into all of the Baltimore Orioles topics as we go along. Bobby?
Yeah.
Some interesting stuff in terms of the Orioles prospects in the past couple weeks. They have gotten their names mentioned in a couple major publications. This is the time of year where publications are releasing their top prospect lists. Their MLB pipeline is going position by position, and they started out with left-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher, catcher, and first base, and the Orioles found prospects on all four of those lists. Pretty impressive start.
Only team in Major Leagues to have 4 prospects already listed, and they're about halfway through. I believe they did second base this
today.
morning and then shortstop tomorrow. Finishing up with the outfield on Thursday. But yeah, 4 prospects. I mean, obviously the big name, Adlai Rushman, number 1 overall pick, catcher. He's the number 1 ranked catcher as well. And then Ryan Mountcastle, the 4th ranked first baseman, Grayson Rodriguez, the 10th ranked right-handed pitcher, and DL Hall, the 10th ranked left-handed pitcher from MLBpipeline.com. These also came with projections for their MLB appearance or debuts. When their ETAs, as they call them, their estimated time of arrivals. Everyone but everyone but Ryan Mountcastle is in 2021. So Adlai, Grayson Rodriguez, and DL Hall projected to be 2021. Ryan Mountcastle this year, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. We expect that to be the case. Thank you to all on Twitter who on Friday that pointed out to me that I was reading the thing wrong. Do you have the MLB app on your phone? The app?
I think so, yeah.
So I get the push notifications for those stories, because especially I get notifications whenever Orioles news is on. And with them being ranked in top 10, I got the push notification that Ryan Mountcastle is ranked in top 10, see when he's going to be able. The formatting on the app was weird that...
Not a great app.
No. It knocked down, like the way they did was the name and then the year next to the name.
Yeah.
But the way it was formatted, it bumped the year down to be ahead of the next player listed. So I read it. I read it wrong, but it wasn't necessarily my fault because it was formatted weird. Mm-hmm. So it said 2022 Ryan Mountcastle, and I was like, that cannot be.
That is way.
We're going to wait 3 more years for Ryan Mountcastle when he was the International League Player of the Year, the MVP. And
that'd be the darkest timeline.
And we had just talked about that last week that Ryan Mountcastle should be up here at some point this season. So no fear, Orioles fans. All is well in Birdland. Ryan Mountcastle will be with the Baltimore Orioles at some point in 2020. Whether he breaks out with the team or not, that's a different story. But you will see him in the orange and black at some point. Yeah. But it was very exciting over the past couple of days for Orioles fans to see top prospects in all 4 lists and be the only team with 4 so far.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, the 2 pitchers who cracked the list are left-handed and right-handed, being Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall, 10th for both of them. Honestly, I think Grayson Rodriguez could be up a little bit higher. You can make the case for DL Hall. The numbers haven't quite been there, but he is on the younger side. But Grayson Rodriguez, at this point, he is 20, 21 years old.
He's 20.
20.
He just turned 20 in November.
Just turned 20. Has, all of the stats that you would like. I mean, he has been a sub 2.5 ERA pitcher. He has been a 10 strikeout per 9 guy, and he has had an outstanding velocity on his fastball and is now developing a changeup. So I think Grayson Rodriguez could shoot up that list pretty quickly. I think he could be in the top 100 prospects in baseball when that list comes out in February. So Grayson Rodriguez certainly is going to be on that list. Obviously, Adlai Rushman will be a top 10 player, I think, on that overall prospect list. I think he could crack the top 5 after he was drafted, the midseason prospect ranking. I think he was 5th overall by MLB Pipeline.
Already 5th. I know he was already top 10, which is insane.
Yeah. And Jim Bowden of The Athletic just put him in the 6th overall prospect in all of baseball not long ago. So these guys are going to make some lists. They're going to get some recognition. But, Bobby, you touched on, when Ryan Mountcastle is going to come up. We're going to see him almost definitely in 2020. Some of the other guys are a little bit more murkier in terms of when their projected ETA is.
Yeah, everyone's, like I said, the 3 other guys are projected for the following season in 2021. And in terms of, Adlai Rushman, I think that's probably fair. You draft number 1 overall. You're highly regarded as the best catching prospect since Joe Mauer or Buster Posey, like with MVP level expectations. You should break through to the major league within a couple of seasons. Yeah. But I think seeing Grayson Rodriguez or DL Hall up in the major league club in 2 seasons is also pretty interesting and exciting too, because I think about the other thing too is look at the positions that these guys are: first base, catcher, right-handed pitcher, left-handed pitcher. You think about the top Orioles prospects over the past decade, and it's the Manny Machados, the Jonathan Scopes, middle infielders, shortstop, third base, second base, maybe some outfield guys like Trey Mancini, who they try to make an outfielder, but kind of those sexy positions, not like the positions that this club actually really needs. In terms of pitchers, if you could have 2 of these top 10 prospect pitchers break through in 2 seasons and become staples in your rotation, that would be huge for this team in terms of this rebuild and how that really pushes this rebuild on a fast track to being, competitive sooner rather than later.
So let's track this out. If they are on track to make their 2021 debuts, and of course these are numbers that are put and projections that are put by outside sources, not by the Orioles themselves.
Right.
But Grayson Rodriguez was excellent last year at Single A. At this point, next year, he might skip past Frederick. I think he could start the season with Bowie.
Yeah.
At this point, which for a guy who's 20 years old, that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. He'd be one of the younger players on the Bowie roster, if not the youngest by that point. So he would probably have to be a Bowie player for the majority of the 2020 season and maybe get a call up to AAA by the end of the year. He would have to be really darn good in Bowie.
Yeah.
But I think that's a possibility.
I do too. It's something not unheard of.
No.
It happens. And a guy, and you're looking at his baseball reference page, he only has 2 years of professional baseball. One's in the Gulf Coast League, and then one's last year with Delmarva, where he was just absolutely dominant. 10-4, 2.68 ERA, and 20 starts, showing durability as well.
Yeah.
I think that's not out of the realm of possibility where he just skips Frederick all totally and goes to Bowie altogether. Yeah. I was like, there's a T word in there, but it's not totally. I'll say totally. And then just go straight to Bowie. Like you said, that's a pretty fast track to the major leagues, skipping high single A ball, going double A, getting maybe a triple A call up by the end of the season, if not to start 2021, and then being called up to the major league club during that season. But yeah, everything, the eye test, the metrics are all there for this kid. Orioles fans he's becoming a fast track of one of those. Everyone knows about Adlai, everyone knows about Ryan Mountcastle, but he's one of those names that keeps coming up when you hear Orioles fans talk about their most exciting prospects. Grayson Rodriguez, I feel like we're hearing more and more. Orioles fans are becoming more aware of this guy's ability and his potential to be up here sooner rather than later.
And remember Austin Hayes back in 2017, not a pitcher, an outfielder, but he zoomed through the minor leagues, and shot all the way up to the major leagues. And I think he skipped AAA. I think they just brought him up directly from AA at that point. Because he had an incredible season, hit close to 400. He had 377 during this in the minor league. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And while this front office is not going to rush anybody by any stretch, I can't imagine that they would hold too many guys back if they are proving that they are capable of being major league players at a certain point.
Right. And also health plays a factor into this as well, because you look at a guy like Hunter Harvey, who his debut was pushed back many years because of his injury history. So they definitely, and in terms of pitchers as well, they're going to take care of their pitchers. It's, I think, a little easier for position players to bounce back from injury and still be on a good pace to meet the major leagues. I think for a pitcher, it's a little harder. If it's like especially an arm type injury, they're going to be more careful with that. Moving on to DL Hall, the other pitcher, it's also cool, I think. I mean, this is just a little maybe a nerdy thing for me, but it's good in my mind. There's a right-hander and a left-hander in these rankings. They're not just stacked up and right. Because again, I've said this a couple of times. The Orioles haven't had like a stud left-handed starting pitcher. Taking out John Means' rookie season this past year and him being the guy moving forward, but since like Wei and Chen. And it's been a right-handed heavy rotation for a handful of years now. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think you would like to see some variety in the rotation, be able to throw out a couple left-handers every 5 days to go along with your right-handers. DL Hall making the list as well, I think, is a good starting point for this rotation. This rebuild where they have a top right-handed guy and a top left-handed guy that they can't wait to bring up. Had a 3.68 ERA in 19 appearances with Frederick last year in the Carolina League. Another solid season. He really did well in Delmarva the year before, so we're seeing a natural progression by him as well every year in and year out. Maybe he starts at Frederick this year, but also maybe he starts at Bowie.
Right.
He'll definitely pitch at Bowie at some point. Well, where he'll start remains to be seen, but again, he's on that good natural pace of probably breaking the major leagues within 2 years.
Right. The question of where he will start, I think, depends on he's supposed to be at this point. In last August, he suffered a strained lat muscle.
Yes.
So I think he missed some time. He only made 19 appearances when he was with Frederick last season. He had the entire season there at Frederick. But assuming he is fully recovered from that injury, which, given the amount of time that he has had off, I would assume that he has, and he has a solid spring, I think he very much could start with Bowie to start out the season. So if you could potentially see a Bowie starting rotation next year to start the year, really, with Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall on that same team, that'd be awesome. It'd be exciting for people to watch.
Right, and also replacing a starting rotation that was great last year, too. I mean, that's a rotation that we covered a lot when the Bay Sox playoff run as well. So it's just like kind of rebuilding for the Bay Sox, too. I mean, not rebuilding, like restarting where they left off with a strong rotation.
Yeah, and of those four guys, also another mention that Adlai Rushman is officially now going to spring training and will be with the major league team in spring training, which is exciting for fans. I think that is the most important thing. And he is going to get a little bit of exposure to maybe life as a major leaguer. He's going to get to talk to actual major leaguers on a day-to-day basis. He's going to get to practice with them. He's going to get a hit in the cages with them. And he's going to, in games, depending on how many games, but he's going to see some major league competition, and he's going to catch some major league caliber pitchers.
Yeah.
All of which is good experience for him and is going to be exciting for fans to be able to watch down in Sarasota.
Right. And I think this move it's not really a move, but it's like half, for the fans, we're like, hey, come to spring training and watch the number 1 overall draft pick at Major League Camp. And half, for Adlai, I mean, you draft the number 1 overall. He's your top prospect. He's one of the top prospects in all of baseball. He should start spring training with the Major League club. I mean, I don't think that's rushing him at any point. It's a learning experience. Get exposure, like you said. Get used to a Major League clubhouse. Get used to the training facilities. Get used to the trainers and your probable future catching coach or infield instructor, the pitching coaches, the pitchers. I think that's just going to be a really good experience for him. He won't be with them for too long. They'll send him down to the minor leagues once they are getting into probably game shape and want him to start actually playing in games day in and day out. Maybe they pull him up for a game at the major league level, just for fun or a day or one of those split squad days. I mean, it's a good all around. It's just a good, easy move to make. It harms nobody. It only benefits Adlai, and gives something to fans to go down to Sarasota and look and cheer for.
Yeah, exactly. So I got a question in the Facebook, on our live stream on Facebook.
Okay.
And the question is about Wojciechowski, who Rock Kabako had some articles about over the weekend on MASNsports.com. And Woj had some interesting things to say in terms of everybody in the media on the outside has slotted him into the third spot in the starting rotation behind John Means and Alex Cobb. But he says, I've been there before. I've seen that happen before, and nothing is guaranteed, which is the right opinion to take. I think at this point, you still do have to slot him in there because he was solid for the Orioles last season, about a 5 ERA, a lot better than expected, but I don't think that it's not repeatable. I think that was not a flash in the pan. I think this is a guy who we've seen that he can, over a certain amount of time, over a good stretch of time, be a fine pitcher, and I think just considering the other options, I think he is going to get a chance to start every fifth day because the other options are so unproven.
Right, and we just talked about how it would be great if DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez came up in 2 years. Well, that doesn't help this season, and we know this pitching staff is going to be depleted at some point this season. Your sure things are John Means as a starter and probably Michael Givens for as long as he's here in the bullpen, and that's basically it. So in terms of Rock, also had fun with his mailbag entry last week, and it was kind of the what's your ideal rotation for the Orioles? He mentioned Palmer, McNally, Dobson, and Kuehler. It's like, all right, come on, Rock.
Yep.
I think this article just turns into Rock talking to himself. Either way,
the entire thing. Yeah.
I think these are just questions he's internally asking himself and then answering.
He's waking
not
up
actual fan questions.
3 a.m. asking these questions.
But then he mentions John Means, Alex Cobb, and Asher Wojciechowski with. That's your only locks, and I think that's right. I mean, Asher Wojciechowski is probably going to be like a part of this rotation moving forward because he's one of a few options. And you got Cole Stewart signing a major league deal a week or so ago.
Brandon Bailey.
Brandon Bailey.
The 2 Rule 5 picks, Michael Rucker.
What can you really expect out of them? Can they go? I think Woj has, the production might not always be there, but he's at least an arm in the building that has been here, is familiar with the team, and deserves a shot. I mean, we're not chasing Cy Youngs here for the Orioles this year.
Yeah.
Maybe John Means is, but it's more about Brandon Hyde's, I think, going to have a tough enough time finding 5 guys to pitch on a constant rotation as it is. No time to get too picky about it, and Woj has deserved the opportunity to compete for a job.
Exactly, and I think. Pretty much regardless, unless he starts out the season as a 10 ERA, I think he, for the first month of the season, will start every fifth day. Yeah. So, I think it's his job until he loses it.
Yeah.
Idea. All right, on Twitter, at WheelieMan3, do we have any more sluggers in our lineup besides Trey? Yes, and his name is Renato Nunez, is what I would like to come back with. Remember, Renato Nunez had 30-plus homers last year.
I think he led the way for homers until Trey Mancini hit that hot September.
He did. He had a 771 OPS, which is good, not great. But I think Renato Nunez may be one of the forgotten men this offseason because a lot of the attention has been on when is Ryan Mountcastle going to make this team, and if so, what position is he going to play? Signing of Jose Iglesias, signing of Richard Ureña, another infielder. So he has just kind of been put on the back burner because he's not great in the field. He DH'd for most of the year last year. We already saw that Brandon Hyde is more willing to trust Rio Ruiz at third base than he is Renato Nunez. However, he does have some offensive firepower. And for a lineup that is desperate for it, I think at some point you could throw, I think it's going to be tough to keep him out of the lineup on a day in and day out basis just because he adds a little bit more protection for Trey in that lineup, and he's got some pop.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on. I just got distracted by the comments.
The comments are coming through, yeah.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about Renato Nunez.
Oh, Renato Nunez, yes. Sluggers, but besides Trey, yes. No, Renato Nunez definitely. I think the only question that we actually have is where he's going to slot in every day. Probably a DH, but as he gets his at bats, he can hit. And we've talked about this as well too. This lineup not going to suffer from a lack of scoring runs. I don't believe. I think Trey and Renato Nunez. You get Austin Hayes for a full season. You get Rio Ruiz adding some decent offensive production here and there. I don't think they're going to struggle to score runs. It's going to be a matter of them keeping the ball in the yard and not allowing the other team to score runs. But don't forget Hanser Alberto can hit pretty well solidly. We talked about the Iglesias signing being he's not being brought in for his offense because they have offense. It's just a matter of can they outscore the other guys. But yeah, Renato Nunez is a guy that can fill in a DH spot, third base. Can he get his at bats every single day? I think he will because of the DH ability. And then I think he could repeat what he did last year on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and if the only thing is if we do see Ryan Mountcastle come up and DH, or pretty much, I mean, so if Ryan Mountcastle comes up and he DHs mid-season and he has that spot, then Renato Nunez might be kind of out of luck because clearly Brandon Hyde would rather have Rio Ruiz, I think, at third just because of his defensive ability, and you have Iglesias set at second, and you have Hanser Alberto set. Or you have Iglesias set at short, rather, Hanser Alberto at second, and you have Chris Davis at first, Trey Mancini in the outfield. So it's tough to find a spot then if you bring Mountcastle up as a DH. But if you bring Ryan Mountcastle up with the intention of playing him at third base, then I think that creates an interesting – because then I think, offensively, if you're just looking to fill that DH spot, then you can just keep Renato Nunez there, and Rio Ruiz would be the one that would lose a lot of playing time. Yeah,
I think you and I both agree, though, that plugging in Ryan Mountcastle at third, I mean, he would have to show –
he would have to show market improvement.
A lot of flash of the glove at third base. But also don't forget that Renato Nunez played 22 games at first base. So if Chris Davis struggles, which is, of course, not out of the realm of possibility, and let's say Renato Nunez is doing really well, on pace for what he was doing last year at the DH spot, you have Ryan Mountcastle crushing it at AAA. You need to bring him up. It is time, however early it is in the season. We've seen Brandon Hyde do it before. He's benched Chris Davis, and he's not afraid to do it. You slot Chris Davis to the bench. You move Renato Nunez to first base, or you can even maybe because Ryan Mountcastle is, like we said earlier, listed as a first baseman in the prospect list, so you put him there. But then, if Chris Davis struggles, that opens up a spot for you can have Mountcastle and Renato Nunez in the same lineup. Again, assuming that they're both playing to the level that we're expecting them to.
Yeah, exactly. So the infield will be another interesting, and who knows? Richard Urania might give himself some playing time if he starts out great. But none of these guys are sure things. I think the fact that Iglesias got a major league contract gives him a leg up on just about everybody else.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there is nothing is to say that Richie Martin is going to start the season with AAA. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. But, even Hanser Alberto, as great as he was last year, there's a chance that he doesn't repeat that.
Right.
So
that's true too.
A lot will change, I think, as we go through spring training and then hit opening day.
From the MASN Orioles Facebook feed, David Allen, is Mountcastle going to be in spring training this year? I mean, we talked about Adlai. They have not officially announced their non-roster invitees, but I would assume yes, that he would be there at some point. I think he was there last year for a partial of the spring training. So, yeah, I would expect Ryan Mountcastle to be with the Orioles in Sarasota to start camp.
When he's on the active roster as well.
He had to be. I think to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. So,
exactly.
Yes, he will be with the team in spring training. The question that got me distracted earlier from Dennis Startwell, is that a custom Hambino bobble on the desk? It is.
It is indeed.
It is from the Sandlot, and it's yours, right, Paul?
Yes, I got it from a minor league game. I believe it was the Wilmington Blue Rocks down in Wilmington, Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
All right.
But we lost his bat, so I don't know.
It's around here somewhere.
He's just kind of holding nothing there.
Yeah. But he's still pointing. Got the right action.
Exactly.
Got the right action. All right. See any other questions?
Well, I was starting to think myself as to the outfield scenario because we've spent a lot of the time in the offseason talking about the infield and where these guys are going to play. But we have Austin Hayes at center. I think we have made our opinions of Austin Hayes pretty clear.
Yeah.
We have, if Chris Davis is at first, And if Renato Nunez is your DH, I think Trey Mancini still remains in right field despite his defensive limitations at that position.
Yep.
It's not ideal, but I think that's just where you got to keep him for right now.
Yep.
Left field, they've talked big talk about Anthony Santander. We saw some great play from him, especially at the plate. In the field, not so much. He played a little bit. I think he got better as the season went along. He made some strides there. But you have other guys in DJ Stewart, even a Stevie Wilkerson that might potentially push him if he's not doing too hot.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I think at this point, Santander, Cedric Mullins, or Santander, Austin Hayes, and Trey Mancini in there. And then, I just Freudian slip, but Cedric Mullins is another guy who's going to be
don't forget about Cedric Mullins.
in there as well.
He was the opening day center fielder last year.
So I think different spring trainings from different guys could change our perspective rather quickly of the outfield.
Yeah, and I mean, we obviously, fell in love with Austin Hayes at the end of the season, all the highlight catches he was making. But I think you and I, if you were to ask me right now who's your opening day center fielder, it would probably be him. But I don't think he's a lock either. I mean, he's got to show that he's capable of playing every day throughout the course of a whole major league season. Your real only definite lock is Trey Mancini, but then again, he could also. That's the other thing too, is like if if Chris Davis struggles, Renato Nunez is your DH, Mountcastle's not ready, you're forced to play Mancini at first base. That opens up another spot in the outfield that you have to fill between Austin Hayes, like you said, Stevie Wilkerson, Anthony Santander, Dwight Smith Jr., DJ Stewart, maybe Cedric Mullins. I mean, it kind of becomes a problem. I mean, one problem opens up another one because you have to fill in position with a guy that's already kind of locked into a spot. Trey Mancini's metrics out in right field aren't the best, but I would probably, looking at him, if he's listed as an outfielder, I'm starting him in right field.
Right.
I think he's the only for sure lockdown there. Santander, you would think he played so well during that couple week stretch in July, I want to say, or maybe it was late June when Trey Mancini was struggling. That's why he kind of stuck out. But
whenever his
fan club was here, can he take that leap? I mean, we've seen his bat fluctuate, be really, really good, then really bad. His defense, he'll make a sliding play here or there. His arm strength is phenomenal. He can throw the ball out the yard, but can he track down a ball and make a catch?
Yeah. Don't forget in that great win. This is off track, but with that Rio Ruiz walk-off against the Astros, he severely misplayed a ball in the right field corner, and that cost them a run. And if you remember, he tried to throw the ball, and the ball slipped out of his hands. And it was just kind of a little bit of encapsulation of just the kind of experience that the Anthony Santander experience in the outfield.
Yeah. There's a lot of outfielders on this list. And DJ Stewart, I mean, I feel bad saying this, but I almost even forgot that he was going to be there. And, one, health-wise, can he play every day? How was he health-wise? And two, he wasn't too great out there either. I mean, some diving catches. I mean, the one sliding catch he did make was a great play and all, but, he's not really a fast guy. He's definitely a power hitter out there, but probably shifting to an infielder at some point later in his career. I don't know if you want him out there tracking down balls. So Austin Hayes and Trey Mancini are probably your sure things, even though Hayes still has to earn his way onto this roster and keep his spot there. But the outfielder is just as much of a question mark as the infielder because there are so many names out there. And there's also guys waiting in the wings down in the minor leagues. Yeah,
and Bob Carbowinacek, I'm sorry, I just butchered your name. Mason Williams throwing out another name. Mason Williams should be in the outfield mix as well. I think they have I would give him where, other guys might have a leg up. I would say he's got a leg down. That's not an expression, but I don't think Mason Williams.
Know what you mean?
He did not get a whole lot of exposure. He was a late call-up last year. He has the ability to play center, so I think that helps. However, I just think that they are so loaded with other young guys that they want to see get a shot. Like I think that they'd almost rather see. I'm just speaking for them here, but I think they would almost rather see a Ryan McKenna than they would a Mason Williams.
I was going to mention, was this the year we're going to see Ryan McKenna break through?
So
he kind of struggled offensively a little bit last year, but Buck Britton was very complimentary about his efforts and what he can do once he's on the base paths. So that's a plus for him in terms of he's able to break through. What about Neal Diaz? Did we see him break through at some point this season too? I mean, he could possibly fill a DH spot as well, but you would ideally like him as a center, as an outfielder, and playing defense.
Well, the question is also, are we going to see him in the top 10? I don't think so, but top 10 outfield prospects. I think at this point he might have it's just been a while before we've seen him play, since we've seen him play really, really well.
Right.
He hit about 260 last year, and he had a better second half of the season than he did a first half. The other thing is, while he has flashed all 5 tools, he has not shown the ability to play consistently.
Right.
He was a DH in some of those Bowie playoff games,
and
it had a chance, and a guy that we thought at some point, because of his speed, because of his athletic ability, might be a center fielder. But suddenly, he might be regressing there if he's put in DH. So
and playing right field every day.
Yeah. So that he kind of has gotten a little bit lost in the shuffle. He just, at this point, it's a different. This whole minor league system has been influxed with such talent that if you're not playing up to a certain level, you kind of get forgotten about.
Yeah.
You have to, which is good because you have a whole lot more competitiveness in the minor leagues than you did a year ago. So.
Right.
You just have to keep pace with some of the other guys, because some of these guys, I don't think we saw a year ago, I don't think any of us saw Cedric Mullins getting passed up by Austin Hayes, but it happened.
Right.
So
it's true.
Or passed over rather. So, you just have to put up the stats to remain competitive, and we just have not quite seen a breakout season from Neal Diaz. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we haven't seen it yet.
The ball don't lie, the ball will tell. And also mentioned, going back, just touching on the rotation real quick, we talked about Rodriguez and DL Hall. Steve Molesky on MASNsports.com today had a great article about the AAA rotation. We're not even talking about AAA guys out of Norfolk who could possibly break through this season. You're talking about guys like Keegan Aiken, Zach Lowther, Alex Wells, Dean Kramer, Michael Ballman, Cody Sedlock. I mean, those are big names that Orioles fans are familiar with that are probably also expecting them to break through at some point too. So, I mean, it's not... And that was just using the pitchers as an example, because there's also obviously position players too. We talked about Mountcastle, Mullins, but it's not all just I was on the roster in September last year, I'm going to have it. No, there's a lot of talent knocking on the door, and again, in the year 2 of a rebuild, they're going to give guys time and they're going to give guys chances to see what they can do. So it's going to be a scrapping and fighting for your position every single day, no matter what level you're playing at.
Yeah, a couple comments for us coming from Justin LaRue. He asked about Rio Ruiz. We talked a little bit earlier in the podcast about Rio Ruiz and him. If they don't bring up a Ryan Mountcastle, I think that improves his chances of staying at third base. I think that pretty much goes without saying. So I think that's the biggest thing to take away from Rio Ruiz. I think he's above average defensively, but until he is hitting above 240, he has not locked down a future position on this team. At this point, he is still a placeholder, I think, in the organization.
Yeah, definitely. But also part of that question was, is he opening day third baseman? I would probably say yes.
I would say yes at this point, yeah. And then another one about Giancarlos Encarnacion, who the Orioles acquired in one of their midseason trades for Kevin Gausman, coming back from the Braves organization. That point, he was a very low-level prospect, and unfortunately, he has still remained a low-level prospect. He spent most of the season with Delmarva last year. You saw a little bit from him. Apparently, he improved a whole lot in his play at third base. He's big for a third baseman. He's like 6'3". He looks almost out of place there.
Oh my God,
but
huge.
He is still pretty gainly considering he is that size and playing the hot corner. But we just have not seen the offense get to the point where he can progress through the minor leagues. He hit just 240 last year, only 9 homers in 120 games. So he is in need of a breakout year, I think, in order to move up through the organization.
When I think of Encarnacion, I think of when we went down for the Delmarva playoff game, I believe, and he was taking ground balls out there, and we were like, "Who is this massive man-child?
Yeah,
fielding ground balls at third base? Oh, that's Encarnacion.
Yeah,
he is a freak athlete. I don't think he's on a fast track like we talked about some other guys are, like you mentioned. Bat has to come around, still kind of getting used to playing that position. I mean, it's like, I don't want to say he's too big for third base, but like as a big guy over there, you have to be pretty nimble and quick still. So he's still kind of learning how to do that. But yeah, it's a guy to keep an eye on. I think we could possibly see him make a jump at some point, not a big jump like we've talked about some other guys possibly can, but he can probably make his way up to Frederick at some point this year.
Yeah, and for an organization that still needs some infield talent on the way, we know that they have the pitchers within the organization. He's still listed as the 30th, or at least midseason last year was listed as the 30th best prospect within the Orioles system. So, there is still a chance that he could make his way up.
Oh, those arms.
Yeah, considering there is so much, there's kind of more of a need for infielders and offensive players in particular. All right, that just about does it for the MASN All Access Podcast. You can catch us, of course, on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you can find podcasts. You can find the MASN All Access Podcast, which is brought to you by Marymount University. Visit MarymountSaints.com to learn more about our student athletes and programs. Today, he's Bobby Blanco, at Bobby_Blanco, and Paul Mancano, at Paul Mancano. Thank you to Amy Jennings, our producer today, doing a great job as always, and we will see you next time.